A jam-packed Thursday in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers is officially going to Pittsburgh. We have a quarterback injury in Indianapolis. We have some potential drama in Washington and an extension in Baltimore. NFL Spotlight starts now. Welcome in. It is the Friday, June 6th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show, and it was a jam-packed Thursday, so jam-packed that we're actually going to release this episode as soon as we're done. So there is a chance you might be listening to us here on Thursday, June 5. But for a slow time in the NFL, which usually is in June, we had a lot going on. You heard most of it there in the cold open, and the news that we've kind of been waiting for since March has finally happened. It is Aaron Rodgers. He's going to Pittsburgh. They have their quarterback. It's a one-year deal. He's going to officially sign next week. We're going to talk about all of that and much more. Let me bring in my good friend Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on? So much for a slow Thursday in the NFL.
Yeah, I know. We both kind of discussed for a minute, like, you know what? Maybe we take off Friday. Like, there's not going to be too much happening Thursday. Nope. The news we've all been waiting for has finally happened. And barring a plane turning around, I think it is probably safe to say Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers for this upcoming season, something that we have been long waiting for. Tom Pelissero and the NFL media guys got it reported on Thursday that he is going to be flying out to Pittsburgh, and this deal is going to be figured out so he can be there at minicamp on Tuesday. $20 million is a number we've heard tossed around by Aaron, like he's not going to be running for this $50 million. We're going to see exactly where all that lands. You know, was it inevitable that he was going to sign with the Steelers? Maybe. Was it actually a real thought he was going to retire? Who knows? Maybe we'll get that clarity one day. Maybe we won't. But are you surprised as we sit here in June, early part of June, that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers this upcoming season?
You know, we did like this episode last week, I believe it was, where it was primarily focused on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we spoke about Aaron and when his decision is going to come. We spoke about TJ Watt. We spoke about George Pickens and they need another receiver. We mentioned that the next pressure point for Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers in the quarterback decision was going to be before the mandatory stuff officially gets started, which is next week. It starts on Tuesday for the Steelers. And like we said, I mean, Aaron has been in communication with Mike Tomlin, the head coach. The GM, Omar Khan, has been privately telling people that they're expecting him to come. And essentially, they were just waiting for that final phone call where he says, I'm going to sign next week. And we mentioned this a couple of months ago. The parameters of a contract have been in place for a while. Omar Khan, who does most of the negotiating there in Pittsburgh, basically had the deal done with David Dunn, the agent, where it was going to be a one-year deal, and he's going to come to Pittsburgh. Rodgers went on the McAfee show about a month ago where he mentioned he's dealing with some personal stuff in his life, but he said, I'm willing to play for $10 million, $20 million, whatever it is. He's not looking to reset the market. So we're going to get those final contract details here very soon. Once he officially signs, it will be processed and we'll see the final numbers. But when you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and you look at the situation they're in and where the roster is, I know there was a lot of talk about maybe they'll draft a guy at number 21. My mock draft, many mock drafts had Shedeur Sanders going there. Of course, we know that story. But you look at that roster, it's such a veteran roster and such a win now roster and a team that you can't really afford to go into a year with a young guy who you need to develop and let him have some mistakes. You need a guy who's been there, done that. So when they decided Aaron Rodgers is the guy we're going to go with, we know that the age, we know about the injury from a couple years ago, we know about the potential distractions, but we're willing to go into a situation where there's potential we hit a grand slam. There's a potential we strike out of here, but it's much better than doing any other option that was out there. So they bring him in, and you look at the roster, TJ Watt, 30 years old. You look at Mick Fitzpatrick, he's 29 years old, I believe. Alex Highsmith is a win now type of a player. You trade for DK Metcalf, who obviously you paid $33 million per year. You're not playing around over here. You're not looking for a situation where let's have a young guy come in and we have some time. You need to win now before some of those star players who are on this roster, including, I forgot to mention the oldest player, Cam Hayward, who's basically at the end of his career. You don't have time of year to take another year or two of winning 9-10 games and getting bounced in the first round. So they believe Aaron Rodgers coming into this system with Arthur Smith and that roster and Mike Tomlin as the head coach, who we all know the stat. He never has a losing season, always a winning season, but The goal in Pittsburgh is now winning seasons and making the playoffs. It's winning playoff games and getting far in the playoffs. And they believe Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback at least gives them that shot. I also want to give a bit of a shout out here to the schedule makers. We spoke about this when the schedule came out. They didn't know for sure Aaron Rodgers was going to come to Pittsburgh, but they knew if he does, there are some very, very intriguing games. They didn't give Pittsburgh the full 7 primetime games because there is a chance it's going to be Mason Rudolph. We don't want 7 primetime games of Mason Rudolph. But if Aaron is going to come, we're going to put his former team, the Jets, in week 1. So now you have Justin Fields, the former Steelers quarterback, starting for the Jets. You have Aaron Rodgers, the former Jets quarterback, starting for the Steelers. And also you have a primetime game on Sunday Night Football in week 8 versus former team in the Packers. You get a week 12 game versus team that he said that he owns in the Chicago Bears in Chicago. He's going to go overseas to take on the Minnesota Vikings, who, if you listen to all the reports, it sounded like he wanted to go to Minnesota initially earlier this offseason. So he has the NFC North. He has his former teams. A lot of really, really good games there on the schedule for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the news we've been waiting for, it's finally happening. And the last thing I'll say about this, at least right now, the person who was pushing for this the most, it was not the GM, it was not the owner, it was Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin has a history with Aaron Rodgers. There's this famous video from a game about 5-6 years ago of the Packers and Steelers playing each other, and Mike and Aaron do like a head nod to each other. It's a very famous video. They've always laughed about that. They've spoken to each other privately. They've had communication this entire offseason. I'm not sure if everybody in that Steelers building necessarily had Aaron Rodgers as option number 1, but that was Mike Tomlin's guy for the last few months, and he was willing to wait. He's going to say, let him deal with his personal stuff. We'll be here to support him. And when the time is right, he's going to come. And Aaron Rodgers made it clear to them that when I do come, and if I come, I'm going to be officially all in. There is no Egypt trip and no other stuff. I'm officially going to be all in as a Pittsburgh Steeler. We'll see if that actually happens, but it's officially happening. He is going to sign with this team here next week, and he is expected to be on the field for a mandatory minicamp when that opens up.
So when do you want to go ahead and announce the Allen Lazard trade?
Well, one of the things that we did speak about last week, Ben, was that the Steelers have made it known around the NFL they are desperate for a pass catcher. And they're looking to find somebody. Keenan Allen, the free agent, is a fallback option, but they've been monitoring the trade market. And I know there's reports about Jonnu Smith. They have checked in on Kyle Pitts, which has been reported as well. Allen Lazard also makes sense. He did lower his salary significantly this year, so he could definitely be an option. I know the Jets have said he's now part of the team and whatever, but you never know. In the Steelers, they have 12 picks, up to 12 picks in the 2026 draft, which is slated to be in Pittsburgh, by the way. So I think they could move on from one of those picks over here if it means getting a pass catcher that makes sense. I'm not saying it's going to be Allen Lazard, but I do think that is somebody who would make sense because you can mark it down right now. They're not going into this year with DK Metcalf and then Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin as the rest of the receivers. They're going to add somebody else to that group. I wouldn't rule out Lazard. I don't know if you're asking that as a joke. I think that is something that could be
serious.
a
He's been connected, and it seems like that's always wherever Aaron Rodgers is, Allen Lazard is not too far away.
It's a possibility for sure, but then there's the other guys as well, whether it's a free agent and Keenan. And again, those 2 tight ends, I know, let me just say this as well. I know the Jonnu Smith stuff, like people are like giving the play-by-play about this trade. I do think about that's more of him wanting to get more money from Miami and creating more pressure. To this point, it hasn't happened, but Steelers.
That's why Rosenhaus came out and kind of said what he said, trying to walk it back a little bit, right?
Yeah, Rosenhaus is the agent. And Rosenhaus, I think he kind of caught wind that there were some talks there, but Jonnu wants to stay, and Miami has not had any serious talks with Pittsburgh. I think it's more Steelers have been checking in a lot. They checked in with Jonnu, checked in with Kyle Pitts, checked in with a couple of other receivers as well. They want to add one more guy. I know we spoke about this last week as well. Everyone's going to say, well, you just had George Pickens. George was never going to be there this year. There were too many things going on behind the scenes. Even with Aaron coming in, they were not going to keep him on the roster of all the stuff that happened last year, a lot of which hasn't even been reported. So he was not going to be there, but they're going to have to find somebody else to play with DK Metcalf on this roster, and they will.
Well, obviously a lot of chaos with the wide receivers going on there in Pittsburgh, and the Washington Commanders need to be making sure that they don't have anything weird happening in their room, because right now there are reports out from our friend Jordan Schultz that Terry McLaurin, their star receiver and altogether very, very good guy, easy to work with, is not very happy. He's frustrated that there has not been a whole lot of progress on figuring out an extension for the star wide receiver. The price of wide receivers has been skyrocketing the last few years. We've seen those numbers going up, up, and up. Terry McLaurin likely is going to be in that $30 million plus range, but I don't imagine he's going to be at the very tip top of all the stuff. So I'm confused a little bit because you've got this quarterback who's coming off his rookie season, obviously not making a ton of money. Where is kind of the holdup as to why Washington has not gotten this deal done yet?
So the problem here is simply you look at the age of the player. Terry is going to turn 30 years old here in September around week 2 of the NFL season. And I think everybody would agree with what you just said. I mean, this is a player who is easy to root for, 5 straight years of 1,000 yards, class act, leader, is the role model of who you want in your locker room. Had so many great moments last year, gelled so well with Jaden Daniels. This should be so easy, right? Well, to this point, the offers that have been made to Terry McLaurin have been nowhere close to where the receiver market is supposed to be. And that is why he has been so frustrated. He's entering the final year of his contract. And I think the contract we should be pinpointing over here as a comparison for Terry McLaurin is what DK Metcalf just got in Pittsburgh, which was that $33 million per year in new money. That's exactly what we're kind of looking for over here with Terry McLaurin. That's what would make sense. But to this point, for whatever reason, this Commanders front office, whether it's the age or they think there's somebody else who could potentially be available at some point next year that they could pay or they could draft, I don't really know what it is, but they have not been serious when it comes to this extension talk at all, to the point that Terry actually left voluntary OTAs last week, has not been around at all. And there are some rumblings around the NFL if he's going to miss mandatory minicamp, which would result in fines. But for a team that had so much momentum and so much positivity and everything is going upwards, for something like this to happen, it just doesn't make sense. It's one that people around the league are kind of scratching their heads. And we mentioned the Steelers before. They're looking for another receiver. I don't think they would go out there and trade for a guy like Terry, who, again, I don't think he's even available on the trade market. But the reality is they already paid DK Metcalf, so it wouldn't make any sense. But the point is, this is a situation where if things don't get moving here in the near future, it's something that could boil over and become very complicated and complex. We mentioned the age, we mentioned the situation. I remember doing an extensions video a couple months ago here on the show, and we were like, this is so straightforward. I mean, you pay this guy, you show he's exactly who we want a Washington Commander to be. We reward those type of guys. To this point, it has not happened. And Terry is upset, and now reports are trickling out. And whenever those reports start coming out, that's usually one side being very, very upset and frustrated and trying to get the narrative out there and making it known like, hey, we're not happy here and things are boiling over. And sometimes it's a slow leak out, like, okay, we're going to do one thing here now, then another thing here a week later. If mandatory minicamp comes around next week and Terry is not there again, that's when maybe we get another thing over here where it's like he's grown so frustrated he's willing to ask for it. Like those type of things are going to happen here if the Commanders don't get serious here. So it's been a weird one. It's kind of been boiling over the last couple of weeks, and now it's hit a very, very interesting spot. I don't think he gets traded. I don't think the Commanders would ever entertain it, but it makes sense to extend them. He's supposed to make only $15.5 million this year. That is nothing compared to where the receiver market is right now. But the offers to this point, let's just say it like that, have not been great. Let's just put it like that.
All right, well, let's go ahead and talk about another receiver in the DMV. This time, though, kind of the opposite situation, because while Terry McLaurin is struggling to get paid, the Baltimore Ravens are handing out some money to Rashod Bateman, their number 2 receiver, because, I'm a Ravens fan. I've understood the struggles this team has had trying to put together a wide receiver group pretty much since we saw the days of like Anquan Bolden there. So this has been something they focused on the last couple of years. You've now got Zay Flowers. You've got Rashod Bateman. You've started to put together this room that actually can start competing in the AFC. And they decided, Rashod is someone we want to keep here. And they are now going to be signing him to a 3-year, $36.75 million extension, $20 million guaranteed. I saw the numbers. And even though I know Bateman's been somebody who, Baltimore fans kind of go up and down with, they don't know if they love him. They don't know if they hate him. But this is a $12 million a year deal. This is also kind of weird fact that you might touch on. This is his second extension, even though he's only played 4 seasons with the Ravens. Just kind of a weird factoid there. But $12 million a year for a guy who caught 9 touchdowns last year feels like a solid financial move for the Ravens.
Yeah, so this requires some context to explain what in the world is going on over here. So Rashod Bateman has had a very unique career so far. Being a first round pick, some behind the scenes stuff. He's had like 4 different agents for whatever reason. He keeps on switching over and over again. And in 2023, he had a bit of a weird thing happen to him. And he basically did not report to training camp on time. And the team put him on the did not report list. And essentially, when he reported a couple days later and everything was good. Well, when that happens, your contract automatically tolls another year. Like that year does not count as a year on your contract. It was a very unique situation. And basically, because of that, he basically had an extra rookie year that never basically happened for him. He got paid and everything, but essentially his contract froze. And as a result, his agent didn't even realize that was a rule. It's something that's in the CBA. So last offseason, he did this 2-year, $12 million extension. Basically, both sides just trying to get together and say, like, listen, that was a mess up by him. It was kind of weird. He came in 3 days later or whatever it was, but it was a weird situation. We'll give you this 2-year, $12 million extension. He still had another year left on his rookie contract. So now he was under contract for 3 more years. This past year, he finished out his rookie contract. And now those 2 years and $12 million were set to start on the contract. But his people were like, listen, this is like nothing. He's going to play for $4 million this year. That's how much you're supposed to get. We got to adjust this again. So essentially, they did an extension now where it's 3 years and $36.75 million plus the 2 years that he did last year. So essentially, he's on the contract for the next 5 years, and it's really for even less than $12 million per year. So that little thing that happened in 2023 has completely ruined this entire contract moving forward. And as a result, his agent did this like patch up contract last year. Now they're doing another patch up contract, but his potential of getting a gigantic long-term contract one day is basically out the window because of all this. The team now has him under control for the next 5 years, but essentially his people and Rashod were like, listen, we proved ourselves last year. We had a pretty good year, becoming the complimentary guy next to Zay Flowers, really built a good connection with Lamar Jackson. Yeah, there are still some, drop problems here and there, but for the most part, he has proven himself as a guy who could be reliable in this offense, and good for the Ravens to actually do this over here, because they could have told them, like, listen, we just did an extension and he has 2 more years left, and we get it, you're not happy with the pay, but we just did it. But they decided to do an extension over here and put 3 more years, some good money over there of $36.7 million. We'll see the full structure here in the coming days. But essentially, it's under contract now for the next 5 years. And like we've mentioned before, this is another extension in Baltimore. They did Derrick Henry a few weeks ago. They still have a bunch of other extensions on the way, including potentially Lamar Jackson, Tyler Linderbaum, their center, Kyle Hamilton, the safety, Marlon Humphrey, the cornerback. There are a lot of players there in Baltimore who are due for big money. I thought Rashod Bateman, if it happens, will happen after all those guys, because he's not going to be as much of a somebody who's a must right now with all the other guys who are more urgent, I guess. But they got together, got something done, and now he's under contract for the next 5 years. But this is by far one of the most unique and weird contract situations we've had in recent years. I don't even know how many people even knew about the 2023 thing that happened to him. It also made him ineligible for a 5th-year option. Like, there were so many moving parts with that. But now at least they give him this extension, and he's under contract for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it all works out, right? It's a weird situation. Everyone leaves happy, and that's a good thing. Somebody who's probably not very happy right now is a quarterback out in Indianapolis, Anthony Richardson. Disappointing 2024 season. Maybe might be not even overstating it. It was not very good. Not very good for him. And to the point that the former 4th overall pick now has a guy named Daniel Jones coming in to seemingly compete with him for the starting job this upcoming season with the Colts. Now he's got something else that's going against him, and that is a shoulder injury that he actually got during OTAs that is now going to make him out for minicamp next week. It's not when he needed to try to get his footing, I imagine. I'm curious, though. Do you imagine a scenario in which this shoulder injury actually maybe gets worse, maybe lingers a little bit longer, and he's actually perceived to be the number 2 quarterback even before we get to the preseason?
I'm not a doctor, obviously. I don't know exactly what's going on over there, but I listened to Shane Steichen's press conference today. He essentially told the reporters that this happened last week. They're going to shut him down for the next week, which includes a mandatory minicamp. And he also mentioned that we hope to get him back at training camp at some point, which is a wide range of outcomes. That could be the first week of training camp, that could be middle of training camp, that could be during the preseason. Like, where is that? So there are many questions here, and it's the same AC joint injury that he had last year, which, of course, I mean, you look at Anthony Richardson, he looks like a physical specimen, but the problem so far in his career has been injuries. He has missed so much time due to injuries. Of course, had the benching last year, eventually came back and became the starter again. But this has not been a situation where he's been able to prove that he's on the field. And to the point, the Colts, Chris Ballard, the GM, they went into the offseason with prioritizing getting another capable quarterback who could start in case of injury. And Daniel Jones is there. Daniel Jones signed that contract. It was 1 year, I believe, $14 million. The Vikings had the exact same offer on the table. Daniel took the Colts offer because he saw an easier pathway to starting in Indianapolis with the injuries and the fact that he's already been benched once before. And now with Richardson basically out the rest of OTAs, mandatory minicamp as well, and potentially into training camp, that leaves Daniel getting all the starter reps. And essentially, Richardson is going to have an uphill climb over here to actually win the starting job. If anything, the only way he actually gets it is, first of all, he's got to get healthier, but B, Daniel Jones simply has to have a really, really poor training camp and really, really poor, performances here moving forward, because I'm confident in saying right now that Jones basically has the upper hand and is probably the favorite right now to be their week 1 starting quarterback, considering all these circumstances. I mean, Richardson was not in the best footing going into this year. We know he got benched last year. We know that was essentially a Shane Steichen decision. They had concerns going into the offseason. That's why they signed the quarterback. And now this happening again, it's unfortunate. You can't control it, but it happened. We'll see when he gets back. But if this thing actually lingers into training camp when pads are on, good luck to, Anthony Richardson actually having a shot over here at being the starting quarterback in week 1. Daniel Jones is going to have all the starting reps, basically all those guys on offense from Pittman and Taylor and Pierce and Adonai Mitchell and on. And of course, Tyler Warren, their number 14 overall pick. They're all going to be used to Daniel Jones being the guy under center throughout the summer. So that's the way I would say it right now. It's unfortunate for Anthony Richardson, but that's kind of where we are right now. And it's yet another injury for the former number 4 overall pick.
Fun day in the NFL on Thursday. Make sure you guys are subscribed so when these kind of things happen, you see it pop up on your feed. This episode, we are finishing recording right now. I'm going to be flipping this out. It's going to be going out. So by the time you're listening to this, you're going to be like, wow, it's impressive. They got that out very quickly. Guess we'll be happy. So make sure you're subscribed. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You'll get those notifications turned on, all that good stuff, so you can rock along with us. And we should have a good guest on Tuesday. We got the booking confirmed for a Monday record. So as long as all things go swimmingly, we'll have a very fun guest on Tuesday.
Yep. Thank you to Ben for all the behind the scenes stuff. If you're watching this on Thursday, the day that we released it, but that will do it here officially for our Friday, June 6th edition of the NFL Spotlight Show. We will be back here tomorrow morning. We'll be back here Monday morning to start off a new week, unless something crazy happens on Friday, which makes us have an emergency podcast. But unless that happens, we will be back here on Monday morning. See you then.